Second.
Okay.
Fantastic. Okay, it's going up. That should go up in a second. Yeah, looks like, yeah, there we are. Okay, so let me just share this over to our wonderful friends. And we can jump right in. Okay. All right, we're getting there.
Are we live, Uri? And we're back.
Okay, I think we're back. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hold on 1 second. I don't hear you yet.
All right.
So let's see if we can get this connection. We'll drop that.
Okay.
One more thing to take care of over here. And if you want, you could start your intro while we just get this rocking.
Okay. Hi, I'm Larry Stein, and you're on my new site, Stein on Stuttering. I used to not be able to say that, 2 of those 3 words. I could say on, but not Stein nor stuttering. It's a new site. It's a place for people who stutter and want to find their way forward and live the life they want. And today I'm really happy to have Uri Schneider with us. Uri is a well-known speech therapist and a really great guy. We met a couple of years ago at the NSA convention, and I had just given a speech. I was hanging around, and this tall guy walks in with what seemed to be an entourage, and I asked this woman.
That must have been my father.
And I asked this woman, who are these guys? And she said, oh, those are the Schneiders. So they were like rock stars. So I never met a rock star, so I had to meet one. And it's been wonderful ever since. You know, we've kept in touch by phone, by Zoom, and by Thai food in Israel. Really great Thai food in Israel. And so let me just give you a quick bio on Uri. He's an MA, SLP. He's a partner in Schneider Speech and faculty at the School of Medicine at the University of California at Riverside. He specializes in stuttering, voice, learning, and speech improvement. Working with both children and adults, he helps people progress in the face of stuttering, voice problems, and learning issues. Uri presents at professional conferences and delivers workshops around the world and here. He has a wife and 4 children and a wonderful father who I also know and love. So let's get started. How are you doing, Uri?
Fantastic. Fantastic. Good to see you, Larry. Great to
Great
have
to
this
see you.
opportunity. Amazing that it all came together.
Face of stuttering, voice problems, and learning issues.
Oh, hold on.
Uri
We're getting a little
presents
playback
at
here. 1
professional
second.
conferences and
There we go. Okay.
the technology. We're there. So give us some background. What's your strategy in working with people who stutter?
Yeah. Strategy with people who stutter. I think, no 2 people are the same. There's no, before you get into something, you have to get to know who the person is. I was listening to another webinar by Hanan Hurwitz, a really great guy in the stuttering community doing amazing things. And one of the things that he kept emphasizing was, the problem is not the problem. The problem is what you make of it. It is what it is. And for different people, they experience it differently, that their reality and their experience is what it is. So the key is really trying to figure out, not only the physical trait, but what's the person's experience and with it, and where is it getting in the way? Where is it holding them up? So I think before we make a game plan, I like to think we'd like to collect the dots before we connect the dots. And that happens through a pretty informal, what appears to be an unstructured conversation, but really get to know the person. What are their strengths? What are their interests? What are their talents? What are their achievements? Recently, I've met a couple young people who have completely, shifted their fitness and their wellness. And now 5-10 years later, they're really still grappling with their stuttering in a big way. But in reality, they don't recognize they can leverage a lot from what they managed to do in another kind of mountain that they climbed and bring that into how they kind of get over, get past, get through this challenge. And in that sense, it's all about getting what people want, figuring out what someone wants and figuring out how to get it. And ultimately, that's a combination of dealing with ways to do something about the physical trait, and at the same time, coming up with ways to keep your eye on the prize and not get distracted and not let other people get distracted, whether you stutter or not.
I like that that the problem isn't always just the problem. Yeah. So is there anything that particularly distinguishes your work from that in the mainstream?
I'd like to think we're mainstream, but I'd like to think, first of all, big shout out. I'm speaking to you in Chicago, my amazing colleagues, one of whom I'll be Skyping with or Zooming with right after our conversation, and my colleagues around the country and around the world. But I think what we do pretty well is really focus on the person, starts with the person. We're not here to treat lips. We're not here to treat stuttering. We're not here to treat vocal folds. People, either parents or people themselves, come because they're concerned about the way the stuttering issue is getting in the way of their connection, their communication. So we look at the person, we look at it in the scope of a communication challenge. And then, I think some people are very focused on the physical trait and ameliorating that. I think some people are focused on mindfulness, attitudes, and mindset and psychology and emotions. I think that we have a very broad perspective and a wide skill set. So we're able to borrow from different tools at our disposal to help different people differently. So whether it's dealing with the stuff above the surface of the iceberg, use the iceberg analogy a lot if anyone hasn't been familiarized with that, the idea that there's a part of stuttering experience that's visible, that's audible, and that is apparent to people on the outside. And those are the sounds or the behaviors that are observable. There's another part of the stuttering experience, no less important, which is beneath the surface, which is the thoughts, the feelings, the anticipation, the self-talk, the beliefs, and the choices that people make, and the effort and the physical experiences and the emotional experiences and the thoughts that go through one's mind. So we try to look at each person and figure out what's going on above the surface, what's going on beneath the surface, bring them with us so that we're not kind of slicing things up and giving them a rundown, but doing it together, serving as a guide so that they can be the hero and that they know exactly, exactly what's going on, because no one knows better than the person themselves. So if we can be a guide and help them discover what's the feature set, what's the makeup of your stutter, above the surface, beneath the surface, that's going to really help us make a game plan and determine how much attention should be given to the part that's above the surface, the physical experience, the stuttering itself, and then what attention should be given to the stuff that's beneath the surface. And recently we've been formulating a new way to think about how we frame the work. But essentially I would say that's what we do well. We're not focused on one or the other, but really, personalizing it and individualizing it based on each and every person we meet, and letting them dictate, what dose and measure they feel they need of each part of that.
It's really thoughtful, I'll tell you. I mean, as a person who really struggled with stuttering for 50 years, and I'm not a perfect speaker by any means, I'll tell you, I spent my life under the surface, under that iceberg. But I was so concerned with above the iceberg and fluency and all that stuff. Should we be looking at fluency as the primary goal, or is there something else?
Well, I think it goes back to the question you asked before, the approach. So I think in some ways it's a red herring, because if a person is so consumed with how they talk, and then we kind of really feed into that and work exclusively on fluency, sometimes what appears to be the most direct way to do things, which would be, hey, person has a stutter, they're bothered by their stutter, let's do something about the stutter. Inadvertently, you can actually end up in an even more tight kind of a situation where you used to worry all about getting stuck. Now you worry all about doing a particular strategy or hitting a certain target, and woe is me if I'm not doing my targets right. So I would suggest in most cases, to work on the fluency is some part or some measure of the above the surface. And there are different ways to do that, but I think there also has to be a measure of attending to the beneath the surface, and a healthy integration of the two is going to allow for ways to work on the fluency and get a better handle on how you can get your words to come out with more ease, with less tension, with less struggle, less physical struggle, but at the same time doing so in a way that feels spontaneous and automatic and effortless, and really expressing what you want to say and not feeling like you're fluent, but you're walking on a tightrope. You can't remember what you really wanted to say.
Okay.
I think it's a tricky one. We can't ignore the fluency,
Yeah.
but at the same time, we certainly can't kind of myopically focus on it.
Right. So, I run into so many people who've just given up on speech therapy. I tried, it didn't work, but they'd like to improve their speech. They're frustrated somehow. What would you suggest? Would you suggest some kind of different speech therapy, something else maybe? What's your
I
thought?
think the first question that we like to ask, and certainly we meet those people too. Some people we meet, it's a totally clean slate. Many people we meet have been grappling with this for quite some time and have tried different things on their own, or paid for different programs, or worked with different people. By no means does any person, not us nor anyone else, have the cure-all silver bullet. So anyone that tells you, come to me, it's 100% guaranteed, and I'm the only person in the world, run the other way quickly.
Yep.
So by no means do I suggest to have the golden, magic 8-ball on this one. But I would ask people, well, what have you done in the past? What was most helpful? What was the most helpful thing anyone ever told you? It could be a parent, a professional, a friend, a teacher. It could be something you discovered on your own. What's been most helpful? And then I would ask, what's been the least helpful? What was the dumbest, most annoying, waste of time, denigrating thing that anyone told you to do? I recently met a 19-year-old young man, comes from a very challenging background, parents who were basically verbally abusive, besides the fact that he stuttered. It didn't bode well for that either. But he's one of 10 children, and his siblings got together to give him the opportunity to work on his speech. So they They came together and said, we'll do whatever we have to do to fund this, to give our brother this opportunity. And he told me his story of this question. And he reported to me most recently, after several different therapy experiences, he did something where the theory was we need to connect the two hemispheres of the brain. Originally, you were destined to be a lefty. You forced yourself to be a righty. We got to go back and retrain the brain. So you need to crawl on the floor for a half hour a day to reconnect the right and left hemisphere. And he said to me, just to tell you how badly I want to do better, I did it for 6 months. Every day, 18-year-old kid getting on the floor, crawling. And I said to him, I want to apologize on behalf of whoever had the audacity to suggest such a thing. Even if there was any basis for it, which I don't believe there was, it's denigrating and it's disrespectful. So I think, to your point, you need to figure out what's worked in the past, what hasn't worked in the past. Figure out if there is something valuable, build on it. If there's baggage that's been unhelpful, let it go. And ultimately, any person that wants to do better, we have this belief that no matter how old you are, no matter where you've been, there's always a new opportunity today and tomorrow, and to create that writing of that next chapter in your journey. So I think there's reason to have hope, and there's also reason to have skepticism. So what we've done lately, especially with Corona, is to give people opportunities to get together for free with other people who stutter and with our team, free opportunities to meet up. We're going to do another one of those on June 14th. I think that'll be the 4th round. And we have one for teens and adults and parents separately. What we've also done is creating, low barrier of access. So like a group therapy once a week. So it's a lower cost, and it's an easier nut to crack in many ways, both in terms of time and exposure and risk and so on. And then I'm excited also about this online course that I'm sharing publicly for the first time, which will be a self-help online course, also a free preview to kind of dive in and see if it feels like it's something that's of interest, and then making that available in a way that's accessible and affordable and very low risk, but potentially enabling people to get an understanding. There's 4 things I think people need, people who stutter, 4 things. First part is self-knowledge, to understand what's communication, how does speech work, how does communication work, and what's going on with my stutter. And so with no fancy lingo or theoretical stuff, it's kind of giving people the opportunity to look under their own hood and understand how their engine works. I had a mechanic, he would never let me take the car back until he explained exactly what he did and how I ended up at the mechanic and what I needed to do so I don't come back. That was the mechanic I loved. And that's kind of how we look at things. Not that people are cars, but we want people to look under the hood for themselves and figure out what they need to know, create their own dashboard so that they know, how things are going and what things they can do to kind of adjust or tune to get better results. The second part is self-adjustment, and that speaks to the fluency piece, the physical piece. What are some things you can do to communicate or do differently so that you get better or different results in terms of the ease with which the words come out? The third unit is about self-acceptance, and that's one part of kind of relating to yourself. I think it would be, I thought about this a lot, what to say, what not to say, but at least to acknowledge that our country is in the midst of great conflict and very much unresolved problems that need to be addressed. I don't want to say more because there isn't the right thing to say, and I don't think I'm the person to say it. But what I do think is it shows we're torn between ourselves, and we're also torn within ourselves. And I think that with stuttering, what happens is people have, their identity and then their beliefs about stuttering, and there's this conflict. And the idea of finding a way to make harmony. I am whole just the way I am, and I have 99 amazing qualities, amazing attributes. I also stutter, and finding a way to weave that together, that one doesn't negate the other. I don't have to ignore my stutter, but I also don't have to let my stutter negate all the other great attributes, qualities, and assets that I bring. So that's self-acceptance, finding a way to be whole, even as we're absolutely broken. All of us are. And then the fourth piece of this is self-advocacy. This conversation with you, Larry, and what you're doing for people is, how do you tell your story? How do you walk into an interview? How do you come to the family Thanksgiving event and get the attention, get the listening, get the treatment, get the dignity that you know you deserve? People don't know what to make of stuttering. So very often the person who stutters is concerned and worried and maybe even hurt, rightfully so, by the reactions and manners of others. But in reality, other people sometimes don't know what to do. Should I look away? Should I not look away? Should I continue the conversation? Should I end the conversation? They don't know what to do. So I think this little piece is about, how does a person on their resume or on an introduction meeting, a significant other, how do you kind of put it on the table and make it matter of fact, address the elephant in the room, and in that way get better results and get what you want? So the first is self-knowledge, self-adjustment, self-acceptance, and self-advocacy. And that's how we try to kind of put on the table all the different parts that we think we see people find helpful, both in private work that we do, in the groups, and also in the online course for people helping themselves.
That's great. It's impossible to pigeonhole stuttering into one thing. It's just like you're saying, it's so dimensional. So, client success stories are different, and everyone has a different type of story. Can you share something that will get us excited, inspire us?
Sure. Well, one thing is this young man that I met just a month ago, and certainly his story is exceptional in that it's been such a short amount of time. Corona's given us the opportunity to work in a much more condensed fashion, sort of personalized, individualized, intensive. So we've met for 3 weeks. We did 3 times a week for 40 minutes, and then we're meeting every week on twice a week. And then this past week, he fired me. He told me, I think we could use some more time between meetings, and I couldn't have been more excited. So now we're going to meet once a week. But he's really driving his own process forward. And what's amazing is when I met him, as I said, he came from a background that couldn't have been more challenging, financially and emotionally and everything. Came with a stutter that was pretty pronounced, really, really strong. He had all kinds of things that he would do. So he would talk, and then when he would breathe in, he'd make a noise like, there'd be all these extraneous noises and movements as he was trying to get his words out. And it was very difficult for me to really hear him out. And certainly it was effortful and hard for him to say what he wanted to say. We went through these 4 units together, and slowly but surely getting someone or giving someone the opportunity to try something on, a strategy to be fluent, is easy, to be honest. In a controlled situation with a coach at your side, dynamics are really structured. It's not rocket science. And I'm quoting some of the greats in our field said that as well. The magic is, how do you help a person own that? How do you help a person integrate that? How do you help a person bring that into their day-to-day life? And this young man slowly but surely kind of charted out how he was going to take his very small comfort zone with me and then expand that into including his brother and having chats with his brother and feeling more open. And his brother spontaneously messaged me and said, I have to tell you, he's stuttering quite a bit, just as he was before, but I've never had a conversation with him like we did yesterday. I said, oh, tell me more. He said, well, he called me to tell me that when he was on the phone with you on the Zoom, he made a phone call. And he never thought he'd ever make a phone call, and he wanted me to hear him. So he made a phone call while he was on the phone with me. I said, wow, that's incredible. He said, his brother tells him, yeah, that was my 30th phone call today. Now, I never told him to do that. But he suddenly was so excited, and he recognized what he could do for himself to I have this line I like, it's practice makes not perfect, meaning practice doesn't make perfect. That's the way the phrase goes, practice makes perfect. It's not true. If you practice a golf swing or tennis swing or foul shot the wrong way, you're not going to make it perfect. You're going to make it permanent. So repetition makes things permanent. So the physical trigger, the physical response, the emotional trigger, the emotional response, the anticipation, all those cycles of dances that we go through, the more we go through them, the more permanent they become. As we find a new way, until we kind of do it again and again, it's building against an old permanent that was built by repetition. By creating a new cycle of repetition, we can change that cycle, that trigger response. So this young man, that was extraordinary. And then he was journaling along the way, and I told him he's going to write a book. There's no doubt about it. And he's handwritten several pages, which he sends to me before each meeting. In the beginning, I would read them. Now he enjoys reading them to me, and they're rather long. And at the end of his last one, he said, I think the people in my neighborhood are going to start talking about me, because it's a whole new me. I go to the supermarket and I would fumble around, and I would never ask a question or never, ask for directions or challenge anybody. And now I'm like deliberately talking to people. I think they're talking about me. I don't know. But what I do know is that nothing can stop me from my success.
Wow.
Exclamation point. And so that's just an incredible journey that he's been on, expanding the people with whom he's, just expressing himself more freely. His stuttering, the average person would say he still stutters nicely, but it's a fraction of what it was physically. But most importantly, he feels like an entirely new person because he's communicating freely. So even though there's still the presence of interruptions, of blocks, of repetitions, what he's discovered and the joy that he has and the smile on his face and the hope for the future and the confidence in his future compared to the despair and feeling like he was worthless has been so incredibly amazing to see. And then making sure that he can sustain it and not puff himself up too much so that he sets himself up for, falling down, making sure he does it in a measured way, in a sustainable way, and having a community of people around him, in this case, brothers and sisters and friends, and he's extending his team, has been a really amazing story. So that's a severe physical trait kind of thing. And then on the other side, you have people who you wouldn't even know they stutter. But they're on the inside, tied up in knots, hiding it and switching words and thinking they'll never be able to find a spouse. They'll never be able to say their vows. And so, working with people like that who dream, let's say I'm thinking of one guy, his name was John and wanted to be like Delta Force, elite commando. And he figured I have to perfect my speech because at the end of, Hell Week, they're going to have an interview with all these psychologists that are analyzing you legitimately. I have to nail it. What do I do? So after doing all this work on the physical stuff, he says, what do I do at the interview? I said, I got to break it to you. In that situation, you're going to be exhausted, you're going to be burned down, run down deliberately. And you have all these people judging you. You're legitimately going to be stressed out. You're probably not going to be able to nail it and hide or not stutter. You're probably going to stutter. Maybe go in there and say, look, this is how I talk ever since I was a kid. It's not a problem here, and it's not a problem here. I'm ready to be a great soldier. What do you want to ask me? And he called me a couple weeks later, and he told me he got invited to all the elite units.
Wow.
And he chased down the particular guy from the unit that he dreamed of and chased him down in the hallway. And he said, I just want to thank you for taking me, even though I have a stutter. And the guy turned to him and said, shut up. Don't ever say that again. We didn't take you, even though you have a stutter. We took you the moment you introduced yourself like that. We knew you had what we wanted. Everybody that comes into this stage has all the physical requirements and the mental, intellectual, requirements. The way you were open, the way you were brave and courageous and vulnerable to put that on the table, that's the kind of presence, that's the kind of person that we're looking for. And that's when we knew we wanted you. So it's not even though, it was more like because of, and the way you handled that stressor, the way you handled that challenge, that really showed what kind of person you are. So to me, those are two great stories.
I love these success stories because they're not the, oh, magic bullet, and he's perfectly fluent.
Right.
They're making their life what they want.
Right.
And they're stacking successes over and over, and they're building on what they have, and those are wonderful. That's really great, Uri. Uri, it's been wonderful talking with you, as always.
There's never
I
enough
wish
time.
everyone could just get on the phone and just call you, and I suppose they could, but I always love it, and this was just another great conversation.
Great. I think what you're doing is fantastic. It's great to kick it off with you and to see this thing that you're doing just continue to develop. Your written word, your videos are amazing. And for those that have the interest, I would definitely encourage you to check out Stein on Stuttering. Larry has, firsthand experience. He's an adult who's gone through all kinds of stages and steps along the way, and he finds himself in a place where all he wants to do is freely share what he feels might be valuable. He has no ulterior motive or agenda, and I think he's got a lot of wisdom and perspective to offer. And in the idea that nobody has the whole picture, I think the multiplicity of stories, the more people you can listen to and check in with and learn from, the wiser and better off you'll be. So I encourage you to check out Larry. And I'll make one plug for our website, schneiderspeech.com. I'll even do one cool background, and you can see on our website the free documentaries and all kinds of stuttering films that are accessible. You can check us out on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And if you click on the website, you can send us a message. You can schedule a call with my assistant, Barbara. And if you want to get on a call with me, you can set up a free 10-minute phone call. We'd really try to be accessible and responsive and, be open the same way we hope everyone else can be. So wish everyone stays safe and well. And thanks for this time together.
Thank you, Uri. You're terrific. Talk soon. Take care.
Keep it up, Larry. All the best.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.